Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast. Today's entrepreneurs are mental athletes that have to know about the mind and how to keep it fit. Our goal is to increase our resilience against stress and anxiety, optimize our productivity, motivation, and optimism by learning about the human mind through psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. I'm your host Ozan. I'm a founder who has experienced the challenges of launching and growing a business and a keen student of human behavior over the last 15 years. I'll share with you what I know and learn. Hundreds of impactful, behavior-changing ideas are waiting to be discovered by us. Let's begin now. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Mental Fitness Podcast for entrepreneurs. Today we are with Daryl. Hello Daryl, how are you? How are things?
Really well, thank you. And yourself, Ozzy?
I'm all right. So we've been having a few conversations with Daryl. He's really interested in the mental health space, especially and as an award-winning consultant who works with startups and entrepreneurs. I think his expertise and perspective on this issue is highly valuable. So today we'd like to discuss how does stress change your thinking as an entrepreneur? And it is something that we have to deal with constantly. But yeah, over to you, Daryl. Let's have a chat about this. What do you think? What were your observations?
Yeah, probably quite a few. So I'll pick one to start with, of course. In terms of how stress can change our thinking, if we're not aware of the stressful environment or situation we're in, and if we're just trying to kind of just carry on and just sort of fight through it, which is a sort of typical natural human response, we then don't notice often that it's changing the way we make decisions. And depending on the severity of the situation and the size of the stress or the worry or the problem it's caused or the series of problems that are going on, your decision, it's quite common, your decision making can become even more irrational, even more poor quality, more regular mistakes. And actually, I saw this in another entrepreneur that I've been doing some work with recently, actually. And I know he has, like many of us have, has had some personal challenges through coronavirus. With everything that's going on, family, and how it affects our business income and everything. And this gentleman was having a particularly bad time, I'd say. And within a short succession, he had several other bits of bad luck, both at home and in the business. And I could just sense he was sort of panicking because there was this like flurry of communication I was seeing from him over space of several days, and the message were a lot shorter and more abrupt than usual. There were some very bad messages, like some very poor decisions, which was out of character for this person, who's normally very sensible, normally very organized. I know that this person made some errors as well around some meetings that they had, but booking them in on the wrong day, turning up late, or forgetting about meetings and stuff like that. So, I saw this situation in this entrepreneur friend, and I just picked up the phone, and I just said, "Hey, I'm just an informal call just to check in on you. I know things are tough at the moment. How are you? Is there anything I can do to help?" It was that kind of approach, and he opened up to me about some new stuff that had happened to him, and I was just able to empathize a bit, just listen, be a sounding board, and Jen just kind of give him some positivity and some encouragement, really, just to take a deep breath. And I even encouraged him to take some time off for a few days. Because I know he's been working 7 days a week, daytime, nighttime, for several months. And I said, look, I know you want to keep going because you want to, bring back revenues and you want to make your new business successful, but you're not doing your best work when you're stressed like this. You're open to making mistakes, making poor decisions, and even upsetting people because of the way you're communicating. So I said, just take a couple of days for you, spend some time with the family, relax, have a bit of you time. You deserve it. And then I sort of emphasised to him that if he took the Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, there was nothing urgent in the business that couldn't wait till the following week. And I said he'd then come back on the Monday feeling more refreshed, more positive. He'd have a clearer head. He'd be able to make better decisions. What do you think about that, Ozzy, as an example?
It made me think of a business panic attack. I don't know if there's a term like that, but
There is now.
There is now. The dynamics within a panic attack is like, for the people who are not really into the details of that, is you feel your heart rate getting higher and higher, and you feel that is out of your control. And as you start to feel that, I don't want to give people who are listening to this a panic attack. So, but as you get into that and feel that you're losing the control more, you have an even bigger size of anxiety on your shoulders, and that in turn creates a higher heart rate, and so you go into this vicious downward spiral, and that creates. And I think in business, this does not happen with heart rate, but it happens with decision making in a way, right? You have to make high quality decisions, and I always say this: the most important thing for an entrepreneur to be successful is to make high quality decisions. And everything actually we do, like having conversations with people, reading, researching, looking at the mistakes and successes and failures of other people, everything in a way serves directly or indirectly to increase the quality of our decisions. But when you feel things are slipping away, you make worse decisions, and those worse decisions put you in a worse spot, which in turn means you now have a bigger set of anxieties and fears to deal with. So if we start ourselves going into that downward spiral, what do you think? How can we pull ourselves out of that? I think what you did was wonderful, like kind of like an intervention, right? But we are not always lucky to have that person reach out and stop us. And entrepreneurs tend to get lonely. That's a hazard of the job. So if we're lonely entrepreneurs, how do you think we can intervene ourselves?
Yeah, I think there's a few little steps we can do for ourselves. And after I answer this question, ask me about brain fog, because I've just thought of that as another example to talk about on this topic. So I think, really good piece of advice for entrepreneurs, but also for parents, hard workers in larger companies, in senior positions who typically have to cope with a lot of stress and pressure. I think the first thing is to awareness, to make sure you're always aware of how you're feeling inside, and have an awareness, like an emotional intelligence of what you're portraying externally. Because some of us are good at holding things inside, at staying calm, staying in control. But many of us, when we're under that pressure, we move into a more unnatural position, an out of character position, where, say, those bad decisions can come in. So the first thing is sort of being aware, and then when you are aware that, okay, yeah, I'm not feeling too good at the moment, I'm feeling quite anxious, might be having a personal panic attack, or might feel quite grumpy or snappy at my colleagues or my children or my other half, for example. These are all signs that we need a bit of a break, perhaps. And then it's a case of just, if you notice these feelings or frustrations, just sometimes it's a case of just, if it's quite a mild one, it's a case of being aware and then taking a deep breath, just pausing just for a couple of minutes, maybe a bit of mindfulness or meditation. Sometimes 2-3 minutes can be more than enough just to help ground yourself again and lower the heart rate, and lower that busy mind, help slow your thinking down and to be more relaxed, more in control again. And then beyond the kind of the breathing exercise, if it's a bit more of a I'm really frustrated, I'm really fed up, or this is a really big problem, how do I cope type situation, there's two things. One, go for a walk. leave the situation behind, leave your phone in the office or whatever, and just go out for a walk. And allowing that your time, that space from technology, space from the inbox, the situation, and just breathe, relax, get some fresh air, go and buy yourself a coffee even, take a bit longer. And then the final one would be to speak to someone, which takes me back to when I had my major burnout in 2016. For ages, I didn't talk to anyone. I put on this face at work, as a CEO, as a businessman, as a keynote speaker. I came to work and I put a smile on, and I made sure I had a shave and, looked like I was well kept, to try and mask what was going on inside, really. And inside I was a mess. And with like mental health and burnout, a lot of the serious sort of symptoms or conditions of the illness, the disorder, a lot of it's not obvious to other people. So it's actually quite easy to hide. So someone might look and sound okay, but inside they're like really not in a good place, really, really hurting. And so when I was in this position, and this is just a short version of it for today, for ages I felt quite depressed. I felt very anxious. I was having panic attacks. So I know all about the fast heart rate, the sweaty hands, the fidgets, the tension headaches, all of those type symptoms. And I was kind of embarrassed. Actually, took it as a failure that as a strong, fit person, that I was in this depressive sort of burnout state. Where I wasn't sleeping. I was so fatigued, I was exhausted. I lost loads of weight. I lost my confidence. I lost my self-esteem. And because of that embarrassment that I drew from the situation I fell into, I was embarrassed to talk to anyone. And as I learned later on, that was like just really silly. And the sooner I spoke to someone, it would have got it a lot easier. A problem shared is a problem halved. One of my favorite quotes. And the first friends that I opened up to was just brilliant. They were so supportive, understanding. It's like I was expecting the worst kind of reaction, but they were just brilliant, and they completely understood the situation and how it made me feel. And that then gave me the confidence to start opening up to more of my kind of close circle, my close friends, some business colleagues, some family. And again, they were all, overwhelmed me with love and support and help. And just having shared that and having people listen and show that understanding and that support was kind of a key first steps to my recovery and getting back to this amazing place for myself in life and in business. And another person that swiftly followed for me to speak to was a therapist, to get professional help on what I'd been through and how I could cope with that better, different coping methods, and help me understand it better from the source of the problems as well. And it's I've been a changed person from doing all of that, and that was a great example of the importance of talking to someone if things are tough.
This is such a great example, and I think it specifically underlines the reality that is strength does not come from ignoring your vulnerabilities, but actually being aware of them. And because we are social animals and we live for those connections with other human beings, that vulnerability is usually the best tool available for us to build intimate, real, loving, caring relationships. And when I say a loving relationship, people think that's sometimes contrary to what business is, but a business relationship can be loving as well if you're focused on a similar mission, if you're driven by purpose, if you care for the well-being and success of the people that you work with. A business relationship can be a loving one as well. And I think that's kind of a different perspective, almost kind of like the B Corp of businesses. And this is necessarily not the dominant model of the 70s and 80s, but as everything, business does change as well. One thing your little story made me think of, and I'd like to add on to that is, in a way, with some of the people that I've worked with as a consultant, not as a psychotherapist, of course, I thought that's worth mentioning as well, is really look at your past and write down, note down what you have accomplished. Look at the areas of growth, look at the areas of learning, and look at the assets that you have gathered in the past. Because at times, imagine you are taking that walk, have your coffee in hand, feeling quite depressed, and that walk and coffee is helpful. But imagine you're thinking to yourself, um, almost self-destructive questions. What have I accomplished? I mean,
Mm,
I've spent all this time, etc. So you're having those toxic internal dialogues.
mm,
And while you're having that, actually having a list that you have physically written down of what you have accomplished over the
yeah,
12 months, what
yeah,
assets you've built. And these assets are sometimes relations, sometimes visibility, network in terms of followers, sometimes it's cash in the bank, and
mm,
sometimes it's just an understanding and learning about a certain marketplace. So
yeah,
you're more mature as a business owner. So these are all assets. And like seeing those on a list, I think that's particularly helpful for a lot of people. What do you think?
yes. Oh, 100%. Fully support that. And actually did this as an exercise recently to kind of update some of my own positivity stories and to look back and reflect on some of those successes. So it's kind of like a bit of a personal development exercise, really. But interestingly, one thing you didn't mention, Ozzy, don't know what you think of this, in that updated timeline, career, call it a career timeline and life timeline that I wrote. So I included the birth of each of my children. They were successes. So I included, the personal stuff as well as the business. But I also put some of the failures in there as well in that timeline, because, to survive a failure or come back from a failure, I think actually there's a positivity thing to embrace those and
There
to
is.
try and see the positive side of them, and how they can make you stronger.
Definitely. It's almost a business owner has to be on top of their balance sheet. Imagine being roasted on Dragon's Den because you don't know the numbers about your business. And perhaps we are living in an age where you have to know the numbers for your business. You have to know your revenue, your spending, etc. But you also have to almost like in a balance sheet mentality, keep tabs on your mental state, because it's one of the resources, if not the most important resource that you're managing, right?
Mhm.
Like for a successful balance, for a successful company, you need a healthy balance sheet. You need good amount of revenue, good margins, and as little expenditure as possible to remain as profitable as possible. And for an individual, then we could make the analogy of, you have to balance sheet your psychology, you have to balance sheet your mental well-being, and really look at yourself, really be receptive to seeing the signals there on things that take a real tax on, take real amount of energy that drain you, so like expenditures, and look
Mhm.
at like, what is the ROI here, what are
Mhm.
my margins, what is the return for this amount of energy I spent versus what I got.
Mhm.
And again, this is not what you got in terms of cash, but what you got in terms of further motivation
Mhm.
and feeling good about your business. So in terms of positivity, growth, etc. And I think this could change. This could be a game changer if we were all able to adapt that mentality of, okay, we have to manage our resources, but
Mhm.
resources are not just money and time. There's also
Yeah,
something else.
yeah,
And as we
yeah.
understand that's something else, and as we try to appreciate that more, I think that gives us that is the strength I'm talking about, like understanding and acknowledging that there are vulnerabilities, there are costs, there are
Mhm.
things that drain us, and
Mhm.
still being analytical and really objective in managing that.
Mm. Mm.
But
Very good.
what I don't know is how we would make that a habit. I think that's the most difficult part.
Um, yeah, I mean, I have this concept called action consciousness, and action consciousness is a level of peak performance but it's very hard for even the most successful people to reach this level. And to explain it a bit further, it's really easy for any of us to talk. We can say we're going to do something. We're going to say we've got this idea and we're going to set this goal and whatever. We're going to conquer the world or whatever. But it's really hard to take that talk and turn it into action. It's not easy to do that when, you know, there's so much going on and so many opportunities, ideas, problems, things to deal with at home, at work. But there's another level of this. So it's easy to talk, it's hard to take action, but it's even harder to take the right action consistently. And there are some things we can do to achieve that, and to achieve that is this peak performance level, this action consciousness status. And some really simple things for doing it. Number one, you know, when you have some talk, when you set some goals, write them down, you know, be serious about them, make sure they're smart goals, make sure you have timelines in place and a clear set of actions on what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, who's going to help you, identifying any risks or threats that might get in the way, and then figuring out how to mitigate or get around those challenges. And then it's a really simple thing, which many people fall short on, is booking the time in the calendar to act on this stuff. Not just starting off the day with a colourful to-do list or a brainstorm, but actually booking the quality time out in your calendar to act on all this stuff, and treating those things as meetings. Because generally speaking, I always say, what do we do? What do you do, Ozzy, when you have a meeting in your diary?
I try to prep for a few minutes and then jump in.
Yeah, exactly. You prep and you turn up for the meeting. You have the meeting. So we should all have more meetings with ourselves where it's just us to act on all those other important strategies, actions, you know, required to help us move forward and achieve our goals. And just by being a bit more aware and a bit more proactive around how we book that time into our diary, and then staying focused and sticking to it.
I think this example ties really well to the BJ Fogg behavior change model. I don't know if we discussed it with you. So motivation, ability, and trigger. So what's like that thing on the calendar is the trigger itself, right?
Yes.
This is you have the motivation, and what remains is the ability, and that ability is something that you learn and you grow into if you create the other one. So if you have the motivation, if you create the trigger, then in time, if not in the first instance, you'll be there. But I think that yours is a particularly good example, because I think that's where most people go wrong. Sometimes they have the ability to a certain extent. They definitely have the motivation, although it's arguable to what extent. But what they lack is the trigger. So what happens is you set a goal, you want it, and then you forget about it because you don't trigger yourself to think about it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit like our time. So we talked earlier obviously about, you know, our mind and our mental health being an asset, but we often undervalue our time. We give it away too easily. There's so many people, things, events that can happen that are very happy to drain our time and take it away. And then, you know, but every minute, once it's gone, it's gone. You never get it back. And those minutes, those hours, they add up. And I've seen this in even very successful entrepreneurs and leaders in bigger companies. They will benefit from being a bit more focused and a bit more protective about that time, and saying no more often, you know, and not saying yes to every meeting. Just because someone asks for a meeting with you doesn't mean you have to say yes. If that meeting is going to help you to achieve your, you know, really important objectives and goals and your life ambitions, then absolutely do it. But if it doesn't fit, just, you know, politely decline the meeting request, but explain why to them, help them understand why you don't have the time for that at the moment, rather than just saying no, which can come across as quite rude and abrupt, you know, and unfriendly or unkind. Just explain the why, and then people understand. And actually maybe that person, now that they understand, maybe there's something they can do to help you. Now they can do something to help you. Now maybe it makes more sense for you to help them back and give them that meeting.
I find
So
those
by all
conversations
means.
usually break down barriers in a way. So when you come out and
Yeah.
say something like that, sorry, no, because I've got a meeting with myself, because I'm focusing on self-development
Yeah.
here. This is not something people are used to hearing.
Mm.
And immediately it's such a conversation starter in a way. It's a different way to build a dialogue or nurture a relationship perhaps. And people
Yeah.
respect you for it. It's not like something
Absolutely. Yeah.
people would despise you for. It's something people respect you for, which I think is wonderful. Well, as we wrap up this session, you mentioned something about the brain fog. What do you mean by that?
Brain fog. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Ozzy. You're well remembered. I was just coming to actually. So brain fog is this feeling. I don't know if you've had this before, Ozzy, but it's something I've had a lot, and I've seen and heard it in others. And it's where you're so busy, or maybe particularly stressed and anxious because you're under lots of pressure for various reasons at home or at work. And because there's so much going on and your diary's so busy and you're not getting enough rest, you're not getting enough sleep, it makes it really hard to make decisions. Let alone good decisions. It's just really hard to make a decision. Where are we going to go? What are we going to have for dinner tonight? And I've certainly had those days where I've had such an intensive, busy day, lots of stress and pressure. And then it comes deciding what to dinner. And I'm like, I don't know, do we have the cheese dish? Do we have the meat dish? I really can't decide. And it's just because you've been making decisions all day long and been under that pressure. Your brain just needs sometimes a break, especially for entrepreneurs who are, having to make so many important decisions every day, constantly. So having a recognition in yourself of when there's a bit of brain fog is a bit of a sign that you just need give yourself a break, just take some downtime, start the day a bit later the next day, go to the gym, go and break up the week, go on a date night with your other half even, is a good one. You don't have to work every night of the week.
I agree with that.
It's stuff like that.
I have experienced perhaps a different kind of brain fog in which I have all these things in my head about a certain or particular aspect of a business. But because of all of that variety of all that information, sometimes I cannot see the woods for the trees, and like I feel that I'm too close. And at particular times like that, it makes a lot of a difference if you talk with someone that they're thinking around their way brain works around some problems and have a conversation with those people. I think that helps. And perhaps what I use in reference to what you've mentioned personally is I try to make decisions about how I will spend my day in the day before usually. So I don't start my day off by writing a to-do list. That's what I do while I end the day on the previous day.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody is different, but this works particularly well in my case because I try to think in terms of two split personalities in terms of the business. One is the strategizer, who is like um, future focused, strategy focused. And the daytime Aussie is the executioner, who is like more tactical and more like just get things done focused. And I found that if I split those two, like give myself a half an hour of break, and then I sometimes do enjoy a cigar, if I must admit, and like do something that I enjoy,
Good man.
and think about the strategy, right? And that gives me some breathing space, and really takes down the stress because it's another person who's doing that. And then the next day, Ozzy might sometimes curse at the yesterday Ozzy because like he's given me a lot of work to do. But it's even in that case, it's easier because you don't start the day with decision fatigue. You just start with the task itself.
Yeah, that's a brilliant example and piece of advice for our listeners, Ozzy. That's a very, very good one. Top marks there.
I mean, thank you for sharing your experience as well. I really enjoyed this chat. For the listeners who have tuned in, this is the first time we're conducting this type of a podcast with Daryl. But I think I'd like to do more. What do you think? Let us know. You can reach out to us. And I think this has been a particularly useful conversation for especially entrepreneurs to think about mental fitness. There are a few other topics we'd like to discuss in the future episodes. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this, drop us a note. Do you have any closing remarks, Daryl?
Just to say thank you for having me, Ozzy. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation, and to everyone who's listening, life and business can be tough at the best of times, but don't do it alone. Partner up with other people and talk to your friends. Surround yourself with good colleagues or freelancers. If cash is tight, do a value exchange. Find people that have skills and resources that you need, and provide skills and resources that you have that they need. And then you solve the problem of you didn't have cash to pay for those services, but you can form a really great partnership there, and we can definitely achieve a lot more if we work together in a wider network and collaborate more, and don't bottle it all up on our own and carry the weight of the world on our shoulders.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.